On the show today, we have guest Laura Lipton. Laura is an international consultant whose writing, research, keynotes, and seminars focus on effective and innovative instructional practices and on building professional and organizational capacities for enhanced learning. Laura is author and co author of numerous publications related to organizational and professional development. Laura considers her experience orchestrating an open classroom for first/second graders, directing a K through 12 reading lab, and providing related academics on a large vocational education high school campus to be among the highlights of her professional career. Get ready for an exciting episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-created curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Dr. Laura Lipton, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm excited today because we're going to talk about a book that, honestly, I love the structure. I love the way that it is laid out. It is so practical, and the intro framing is so, I don't know if pithy is the word, but it's like to the point. It is exactly what you need. It is not super long and like saying things that don't need to be said. It is so great. And so I'm wondering if you want to just kind of general intro, like what should people know about you, about the book? Particularly, I think the way that it's structured is so unique and the topics it covers are really unique. So I don't know if you want to take us there to start.
Sure. I would love to do that. And I'm rarely asked that. So that's great. What I'm very happy about is that you picked up on something that was always our intention. There's a lot of books out there with theory and lots of theory. And so we really wanted to take that theory and put it into practice, give practitioners access to the theory in a way that they could actually apply it and that it would be simple. And, people who are in education are busy. Anyone's busy, but particularly educators, teachers, educational leaders, really busy. So we wanted to create something that would not cause them to have a lot of fuss and a lot of prep, but still be able to be group developers. One of the premises of this book is that leaders and teacher leaders, classroom leaders, building leaders, they're group developers, the leader as a group developer, so that anytime you're with your group, that you have in mind their continued growth, not just to complete a task in the moment, but to use the opportunity of that task to build relational skills. So that the relational skills is the kind of resource capacity to get the work done well, to get it done more efficiently and effectively, and to get it done more collaboratively. So being a collaborative culture was critically important to school success. So the book is designed to help leaders design process agendas toward that end. Because very often we were finding that the notion of a process agenda was a foreign thing. That the meeting was a pile of content, topic, without the opportunity to think about, engage with those topics and each other. So we call it the gum chew ratio, that if you keep shoving gum in someone's mouth and no time to chew, it's not that functional. So a lot of the strategies in this book are the chew time. And what we also recognize is that typically groups are called together to do certain kinds of things. So you asked about structure. The group is structured around 6 specific things that groups tend to do better than anyone can do on their own. And I can name them that they need to do assessments and goal setting. They come together to do that because it has to be a mutual commitment towards any movement forward. Dialogue and discussion, which we'll foreshadow and talk about later a little bit more. Groups are way better at generating ideas than individuals are on their own. Groups need to come together and synthesized. There's everything is so disparate, and so it's not just to connect the dots, but it's creating a bigger idea from those dots. So to be able to do that and hold on to that, and just groups come together to process information. If your meeting is an oral memo, I'm just going to tell you stuff, then you're really not taking advantage of the professional power that's in that room. So strategies for processing information, processing text. So that's the way the group is organized. And our notion is that you think about as a leader, what's your goal or result or outcome for this meeting, and then choose strategies accordingly.
Thank you so much for that frame. I can say for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people have also been in meetings that are exactly the thing you said not to do, right? Where it's just, I'm going to talk at you and you're going
Right,
to listen. And I'm
right.
so glad that this is not that, right? It's like, how to go beyond that and do actual things the group is supposed to do. I really love that frame.
Exactly. And how do you use process to get a group better at doing those things with each other? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I mean I think you kind of spoke to the next question I had a little bit, but if you want to expand on it or say more, the idea of like the dream for either the book or education, I often ground this in Dr. Bettina Love's language around freedom dreaming. So dreams grounded in the critique of injustice.
Hmm.
What is kind of that dream that you hold?
That's a really big, ask a small, insignificant question, Lindsay. I mean, really. I think that schools, education, from my thinking, is designed to, in fact, create equity, to create citizens, people who can think critically. And I'm afraid that we've lost a lot of that. I think with a lot of these attacks on curriculum and drill and skill kinds of things, that we've lost some of that. But I think that education is about being able to think critically and to be confident in your own voice. So, because if you're confident, if we can give kids up access to their voice, have them recognize that is so critically important and confident in that, then you can listen to other people. See, if you're okay with yourself, that's when you can listen, and that's when you don't really need to argue or fight, and it expands our way of thinking. So I think those two things, that we teach kids to exercise their voice and to listen to others, so that you have real discourse around important things in school, and then you're ready to do that out in the world, and that you can think critically about your own ideas and assumptions and about those of others.
I love that framing, and I've never heard anyone put it in that way, particularly the second piece around like once you have confidence in your voice, you can listen to others. Wow. I mean, I'm thinking about staff meetings, I'm thinking about class discussions. How many students are those frequent talkers and how many
Right.
students are like not giving space for others? And
Right.
and maybe it's just right. You need to have confidence in your voice. You have the
Mhm.
space to be like actually heard and like valued for your idea and then you can listen. Wow. So many people need to hear that. Thank you for
Well,
naming it.
I'm glad you think so. We call those people the air hogs, by the way. They just suck all the air. They just take it over. And their persuasive skills are repetition and volume. You know, like, this is how I'm going to make you agree with me. I will keep saying what I said, and I'll say it louder. There we are.
I love the academic lens you bring of just like, we're gonna name that thing. That's what it's
Right,
called.
right.
Repetition and volume. Oh my gosh, that's great. So I think you kind of started talking about this idea of dialogue and what what is kind of the difference between dialogue versus discussion. I had also
Mhm.
never heard someone kind of distinguish those things. So
Mhm.
I would love if you can kind of give us those that difference and then maybe how that helps leaders and facilitators kind of wrap their minds around what are we doing here and thus what kind of approach am I taking to this meeting?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good question, especially that final piece, because just to roll it back a little bit, as an overview or prelude to my answering the direct question, The notion that all of our work is purpose driven and that clarity of purpose is critical. So, clarity of purpose for me as the designer and leader of a group and a meeting, and clarity of purpose for those people who are in the meeting. I mean, I think we really confuse purpose with task. We're not here to let's just say, we're not here to rewrite the math curriculum. We're here to ensure there's equitable and effective approaches to math for all of our kids. That's the purpose. To do that, we're going to take a look at the curriculum. So separating task from purpose is critical. And clarifying that and even starting the meeting with making sure everybody gets that is important. And so now to connect that to the notion of discourse, we really talk about three kinds of discourse. So dialogue, discussion, and decision making. And they're all different. And they all have different purposes. And they all have different protocols, And so if we mush it up, we're going to be less effective at each one of those. So, and dialogue is extremely underused, at least the way that we define it, extremely underused. People think about, we're going to get together and talk, and it's a discussion. We're going to discuss this. And maybe that's good. And maybe there's other ways to engage around a topic and with each other. So, just to give you, I actually have some thoughts about that because I might as well. So, and then I wrote, so might as well share some things I've written. So dialogue it's kind of like the non-consensus model. You don't want consensus. You want lots of ideas to flow. It's about a spirit of inquiry, in fact, that the group's purpose is to generate multiple perspectives, again, to share their voice, to listen to others, to encourage connection making between ideas and between people. But you're not looking for agreement, you're looking for understanding. So that as a result of dialogue, whether I agree with you or disagree with you vehemently, I can represent your idea. I understand where you're coming from. So there's really no need to influence or agree. And that's a hard one because we're so used to consensus models and coming to consensus. And that was such I'm going to say trendy thing. It's not that it's not important at some point, but you need other skills as well. So that's dialogue, lots of flowing ideas. And then once you've done that, then you become more discriminating. Then you say, okay, which of these ideas makes sense in terms of where we want to go? And ideally, your discussion is informed by criteria too. But discussion breaks the ideas into components. So it's an analysis kind of a phase. And the purpose is to generate and analyze ideas, to clarify the distinctions between those ideas, and then define the success criteria so that you're moving towards the potential for choosing one or some of those ideas towards action, right? So in discussion, the group members the intention is to critique and to advocate. But as much as you advocate, you also want to inquire. So in a skilled discussion, I advocate for my idea, but I also inquire into yours because we really want to parse it out and make sure we understand similarities and differences in the various ideas and the various possibilities. So generating the possibilities and then organizing them, sorting them, prioritizing them potentially. Okay, so that's skill discussion. And both of those are necessary. We jump sometimes into discussion without having a dialogue. So I confuse your advocacy with you. I don't understand where that idea came from or how it fits for you. So I'm going to argue with it and I'm going to connect it. It becomes personal, actually, often. So dialogue, discussion, and then once you've had rich discussion, you want to make a choice. So you've generated ideas, you've parsed them out, you understand them, pros, cons, whatever. Then you want to move to choice making. So you're weighing those options against some criteria that's agreed upon ideally. Or sometimes for some groups, the criteria is delivered. Here's your budget, or here's the time schedule, or here's the number of personnel. Here are the resources. You need to make your decision align with the resources available. And so they select the most viable outcome, the viable idea to meet the purpose and that becomes a decision. But the decision, see, the difference is that anybody in the group understands the genesis of that decision. It's not just delivered, it's actually an outgrowth of a lot of engagement. And then with decision making, the team can commit to one course of action.
Wow.
That doesn't mean, sorry, that there aren't some really skilled decision making is a workshop and a book all on its own, how you can make that happen. But those are the three types of discourse that we talk about. And some of the strategies in groups at work align with those. Some are for dialogue, some are for discussion, some are for decision making.
This is incredible. I've been taking furious notes. And so this is amazing to break these down. Am I sensing these are sequential dialogue, discussion, decision making? Do they always go in that order?
They kind of do.
Okay.
That's a really good question. Before I answer, I think of them in that order. But I imagine that there's times when you may have moved too prematurely to the decision making and you're bogging down, and some enlightened group member or the leader, it doesn't have to be just the leader, is going to say, hey, we need to go back and we really need to make sure we understand what these different options are about. And then you're back in discussion. So that would not surprise me. Or you're in discussion and you say, none of these ideas really seem that viable. Let's kind of toss it around. Let's go back into more of a dialogue mode and, generate more ideas. So brainstorming, for example, is a classic dialogue tool because it's meant to be lots of ideas with no judgment. So if you want to think about that, and in big capital letters, it's like that.
Okay. Amazing. This is super helpful. And I can like pinpoint, experiences that I've had in each one of those as you describe them. So that's really helpful. I also see so many parallels to both like adult work and also student work and ways students talk. So it's just so relevant for everyone that it's really exciting
Absolutely.
to me.
Absolutely. And there are, especially with kids, um, because it's not a natural mode of discourse for most people. We don't, we, Western culture is a debate society. I mean, you look at any of these shows where it's like, the pro and the con and this position and then the counter position. We set that up. We are a debate society. And this is anything but that. This is, in fact, so opposite to that. So I think that we're reculturing people to engage them in dialogue. And so sometimes you actually need scaffolds like, I mean, you've probably been in groups where there's sort of the talking stick, you need something that helps someone to take a breath and listen, and ideally listen not to counter, but to understand. It's a very different kind of listening. Listening is not waiting for your turn to talk, right? And so dialogue is contingent on quality listening.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share this episode's freebie, a discussion resource bank. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/220. Now back to the show.
I love that. Yes, I love that so much. I'm like making sense of all of this in conjunction with the work I've been trying to grapple with on seeking to understand and how that happens. And I've been trying to attach kind of values language. So we seek to understand what is the value that underlies someone's decision. And I
Mhm.
imagine that being a really big part of this kind of process from like hearing the perspective in the dialogue mode of being like, okay, I can connect that idea that you want safety for your kid in the school, or you
Exactly.
want, the freedom of choice to do this thing, right? That there's just like value to that.
Exactly. So we're not fighting with, we're fighting for.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. I'm taking so many notes.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so as we are doing all of this work, I'm thinking about the person listening or reading the blog post version of this even and saying, I am about to facilitate this group. We have to do some of this work. I mean, I'm sure you could probably speak to your favorites. I'll say that my favorite protocols are kind of like processes you were talking
Sure.
about where artifact hunt and in and
Uh-huh.
out of the frame. I don't know if you want to speak to one or both of those or a different one of your choice, but I'd love
Sure.
to illuminate for people kind of what is that
Well,
process?
I want to say that one of the things that really is important in a process design is not just putting people cold into a room and throwing, picking a strategy and getting started with that. It's important to do what we call activating and engaging, meaning that you want to give group members a chance to get in the room. People are the first 5 minutes of the meeting, people are still where they were. I mean, their butts are in the chair, but their brains are not there yet. And so I just want to say that you wouldn't probably not say, we're going to do an artifact hunt, let's start. You would do something that would get people talking in a pair or making or jotting down some kind of a STEM completion. The good thing about that is people can do that outside of the meeting and then begin with it. So, for example, let's say your meeting is going to be about, well, if we talk about artifact hunt is about understanding an organizational culture or a group's culture very much, and whether in fact it's value driven to where you want it to be. So we have our espoused, yeah, this is what we say, but this is actually what we do. Okay, so it's a way to kind of examine that. So you might let a group know we're going to talk about some of our values and how we manifest them at next meeting. And please be ready, complete this stem. One value that's critically important to me is dot, dot, dot. Okay, so people come in. So you're not taking the beginning of the meeting time, even people ideally. And over time, groups get used to, if you're asked to do that, you're going to start with it. You're going to need it, but it's not so oppressive that if you didn't do it, you can't do it right then. You don't want to punish people, right? So you come in and then you say, like, meet with two other people and kind of talk about those and maybe agree on one that you prioritize them or agree on one that you think is important, just to get the conversation going, the brains involved, the whole notion that we're going to follow directions, that kind of a thing. So with that said, let's say that you want to do an artifact hunt, and I happen to have it open here. In the book. My BA was in anthropology, my undergraduate work in cultural anthropology. And so I'm very, the whole idea of anthropology, sociology, group culture is near and dear to me. I think that we measure, we assess, and we reward the things we value. And so you can look at a group's reward system and their measurement, their assessment system, their hiring and recruitment processes, and it should be reflective of, it should be congruent with the things that they say that they value, not just lip service. So this is like a digging down and saying, okay, what you do, you're actually you ask people to bring things that they feel are representative, of that. So they can bring artifacts that, let's say that if you were coming to visit our school, these are the things we think would reflect, what's important to us. Awards, schedules, photographs, memos, objects, things like that. And then in a task group, they categorize those objects. So let's say that each person, you have 4 people working, and they've each brought 6 things. You got a bunch of stuff, to do. And then they take the categories and they put the categories up on the wall. And then they take one artifact that really exemplifies that. And then so they've got that done. And now they're turning to, and so we're about to determine a project that we're going to do. We're going to get instructional materials. We're going to do a school-wide event, and invite the public to it or whatever. And that they need to think about so there's the existing culture, the core values of the existing culture are reflected. What would they do? What choices will they make for this new project that are going to reflect those core values or not? So that's kind of the idea of it. It's about congruency and alignment with what we say is important and then what actually is happening in our school. So if we say that health and nutrition are important, and then we have, a candy counter, I mean, although you're not going to argue with a candy counter really, or if we say that equity is important, and then we have, I worked with a school that was putting a yearbook together, an elementary school that wanted to do a yearbook. Yearbooks are huge in terms of culture. Um, and they were going to charge kids. And so if you couldn't afford the yearbook, you weren't going to have one. And so that kind of that sort of a behavior is so inconsistent with the school saying that equity was, and accessibility really mattered to them. So, being able to call that out in a way that's relatively safe. That's the other thing about process and this book is you want to always be mindful of psychological safety in a group. You want somebody to be able to disagree, have a different, the whole voice piece, have a different way of thinking, and have that honored and explored rather than stifled and judged. And so, to be able to call out, are we really congruent with our values, and then have a good conversation about that is really important.
Yeah, I
So,
love that you named that in the book. And just here too, I mean, I've been in strategic planning conversations or things where people are doing a root cause analysis, for example, and they get to this point where, they're starting to blame parents or
right.
like doing whatever, right? And it's like, wait, is that what we truly believe? Or this feels, I can sense just as an outsider, like this, there's something at odds here, but it seems like you can't sense it. And it does not go well when I name the thing
Hmm.
versus having this like co-created activity where we as a group are kind of pulling things in and coming to that conclusion
Right.
feels so much not
Right.
only more psychologically safe, but just like the awareness and the understanding is deeper too.
Right. And there's a sort of a fun quality to, it's one step away. So the artifact becomes what we call a third point. So it's not your favorite thing or my favorite thing. It's like we have this bunch of stuff that we've put together, and these things, do they reflect what we want them to or not? How disparate are they? How connected are they? So you get to examine yourself. It's a self-reflection, tool, really, and then becomes part of a planning tool.
I love it. I imagine with a lot of these protocols, I mean, you can choose from any topic, but I mean, discourse and discussion or any of the others. But I imagine there are some challenges that you've navigated as you've seen people kind of try to do this work and have some struggles or something that maybe you've coached someone through or witnessed
Sure.
yourself. What's kind of the one of the bigger challenges that you can recall and how would someone navigate that if they experience that challenge?
I will give you my first and foremost favorite tip here at this moment. Um, and it's called sharing the what, why, how. So I think what gets in the way is I might say to you, oh, say to my group, hey, we're going to do this artifact hunt. You're going to be getting in groups of four. Here's how you do it. But we've left out the why. We haven't brought the group with us. We've sort of pushed the group or pulled the group. So the what is we're going to examine the degree to which our values are aligned with the things that we're doing. Are our actions really reflecting what we want, what we say that we value? Because so that's the what. Because we're going to be planning this new project, and we want to make sure that okay, da 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 da. So here's how it's going to go, and then I give directions for the artifact hunt. In any group, you've got people who are like, well, I don't want to, I don't do fluff, it's games. Process equals games. And sometimes it does, if you don't understand the purpose of process, there's no such thing as, we feel there's no such thing as an icebreaker or, a warm up. The beginning of a meeting needs to be task oriented. You can get the affect that you want, that a warm up would give you, with something that also prepares you to do the work. So in any group, you've got your high task people who are like, the meeting's at 8:30. I'll come at 8:35 because maybe we'll be actually starting and doing real stuff. And then you have your high relationship people who are, if we don't hold hands and sing Kumbaya, the meeting is a failure. So and you have those poles and everywhere in between. And so when you share your why, you're speaking to both audiences. So you're saying, for example, we're going to be looking at our science curriculum for the next several meetings, and we're going to be working in cross grade level groups of three. So that because we need articulation, we need to understand, what kids are doing in the grade before and the grade after, and to do that, and it will make we have this much work, we have so much work with so little time, so that by breaking into smaller groups, we're going to be get the work done in a time efficient way, and all the voices will be heard. Everyone will have a chance to share and speak their mind. So your relationship people are going, yay, everybody's going to have a chance to speak their mind, and we're going to be in groups. And your task people are saying, okay, we're going to efficiently get the work done. So UI is extremely pivotal, and it's often left out. And it really needs to be planned. One of the things about the book, back to the book, is there's an intention statement for every strategy, and your intention statement is your why. So it's baked right in.
I love that because then people don't have to manufacture their own. And yeah, I love that it's there.
Yeah, the other thing too is you're not randomly picking a strategy because it looks like fun. You're saying, okay, what do I really want to have happen? What's my intention? What's my purpose with applying using the strategy at this time? And so I can double check myself and say, okay, this is meant to do this. Is that what I want? Is that what's going to be important? So yeah.
Oh, I love it. And oh my gosh, I could talk to you about this book all day. I'm just looking at the time. So as we kind of like move to wrap up a bit, I think I mean step one, people should just get this book and it's a wonderful guide. They should use all of the pieces. I'm wondering before as it's like ordered and coming to them in the 24 to 48 hours before they get it, what
Right.
is like a first step? Is there something that people can do immediately after engaging with this episode that they can kind of put into practice right away?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, huh. I think that first of all, I think there's more of an attitudinal preparedness maybe than anything else. It's saying as a leader, I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to try something new. Um, and so just getting ready to say I'm going to experiment and I want to be really clear about what I want to have happen. I see myself as not the smartest person in the room necessarily. I want to take advantage of the resource of my group. And so anything that I do is going to be aimed at that.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes total sense because like you said, an attitudinal perspective for designing and facilitating, I think, the meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think from a practical perspective, they may want to think about, okay, what meeting do I have coming up and what is my purpose? And maybe even write down clarity of purpose. So say, okay, what's the purpose of this meeting? And then let me look at this book and see if I can match some specific strategies. The other thing that might be useful to point out, of course, this is before they have the book, but at the beginning in the front matter, there are several examples. We call process agenda a strategy stack. And there's several examples of stacking strategies for a 45-minute meeting, a 90-minute meeting, and like a 2 to 3 hour session. I think, and you can even stretch that into 2 day session if you've got a big conference. So thinking about the strategies as sort of a stack, so you're changing it up, you're energizing, you're making sure the foundation is laid. And there's some really good examples of that I think in the front of the book.
I agree. I'm thinking, if someone's getting this episode in the summer as they're preparing for the school year,
Yes.
having that, I know a lot of schools like to have a template for an agenda or a
Yeah.
meeting.
Yes.
Use one of those
Yes.
for
Yeah.
that.
It's
Yeah.
very much a template. It really is. And I would say that combined with the what, why, how, and when things go south, it's often because you say, what was your why? Did I share a why? Did I make it clear? Or because we assume the group gets that, oh, I'm doing this for the good of the group and for the completion of the task, but that is absolutely not always true. There's that power and authority dynamic, and you always have that person who prides themselves on, I don't do something because you asked me to do it. I'm actually going to not, I'm going to do the opposite, right? So we want to recruit. When you share what, why, how, especially at the beginning of a meeting, we call that the frame. Um, what you're really trying to do is just increase receptivity to try to working in maybe a slightly different way than has been happening before.
I love that. And I think a lot of leaders are going to be very appreciative of that because I think,
Hope so.
resistance is the thing that's common. As we close, I am curious to know, this is just kind of a fun question that I ask everyone. What is something you've been learning about lately? And this could be professional or it could be totally unrelated to your work.
Oh, my current thing that I'm doing, it's so funny that you asked that. I'm working with a group of people on the idea of collective efficacy. So collective efficacy is essentially the group believing that pulling together, that group can get anything done. And so it's different than individual self-efficacy. Um, it really is about the power in the group. And so we've created, I'm just experimenting. I'm actually working after this on my presentation to a group in June, trying out a new assessment tool for the group to self-assess, individuals to self-assess what they do in terms of 4 variables related to efficacy, and then um, thinking about where they're high, where they're low, and then helping to launch kind of some professional growth based on that. So yeah, so efficacy. I think we toss that word around, but I don't think it's really looked at seriously as a critical component to success for education. So yeah,
Wow.
thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm sure people are going to want to follow up. I'm going to want to follow up and like see how that's going. So how can like people learn more about you or just connect with you and continue to follow your work?
They're welcome to we have a website, www.miravia.education, written fully out. And there's lots of information about the kinds of things that we do. There's contact information for me. I'm happy to talk with people. I love to know where the work's going, what things really stand out. I even said to you at the beginning, earlier before we started, what you chose and what was a highlight for you is very informative to me. So always good. I'm here.
That's incredible. And we'll link to your website in the show
Great.
notes and the blog post so people can.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lipton, so much. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's been my pleasure.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no strings attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.